Gord Long with the Financial Repression Authority. I have with me this morning Jeff Berwick, the publisher of the dollarvigilante.com, a website, joining us today from sunny Acapulco. Welcome back, Jeff.
Always a pleasure, Gordon.
The background that you have should be made into a postcard. You're making me envious. The snow is still on the ground up here in Boston.
Yeah, that global warming isn't really working out.
Yeah, well, good point. Jeff, I had to have you on again, even though it's probably been 6 months since or thereabouts since we last had you on. I read an article by somebody who I actually have respected, Ambrose Evans Pritchard, who writes for the Telegraph in the UK, talking about Bitcoin being basically a failed experiment. And I thought it was propaganda. Then I read an article that you put out rebutting it, and I said you nailed it. So I had to have you on to talk about it. But could you give our listeners who may not know your background some of your background before we jump into that article?
Sure. Yeah, my name's Jeff Berwick. I write the Dollar Vigilante. I've been writing it since 2010. After the 2008 collapse, I began to realize we were in the end stages of this financial system and monetary system, and I began to warn people about it starting in 2010, and I said, but sometime in the next 5 to 10 years, this entire financial and monetary system will collapse. And I said that in 2010. And last year, in my opinion, it did just start to collapse. And I actually predicted it last summer. And within a month of my coming out and saying it's beginning in the fall, all the markets around the world began to collapse. There was massive chaos last summer, as you probably recall. The Dow was down over 1,000 points in one day at one point. The Chinese market dropped 30 or 40% at that time. The world stock markets dropped $11 trillion in the third quarter of 2015. So I nailed it. I think I've got the timing on it as well. I actually put out a video on it recently. You can see that at surviveshemita.com. That's hard to spell. Just survive, SHEMITAH.com. And the video is the Elite's Jubilee Year plan to crash the world economy by October 2016. So I've been covering all of that, and I think that there's going to be a lot of chaos this year, a lot of crisis, and it's all already happening. It's began in January with the worst first month of the year for stock markets in history, as far as I know, in the world stock markets. And then we had a bit of a rebound, and I think we're just about to get back into the total chaos and craziness. And a lot of the financial elites have even been warning about it and even saying this is a debt jubilee, and that if people aren't incredibly careful, that this will end up in total, utter collapse. It might not happen this year, but there will be enough things happening this year that people will probably think that we're pretty close. And I actually think by 2018, they'll be bringing in a one world currency, the SDR. They're bringing in the Chinese yuan on October 1st of this year. That's a big date that I'm watching into the SDR. So I think this is going to be a complete move into a global currency. They're starting to do war on cash and all that sort of a thing. So I've been covering that. And of course, as the Dollar Vigilante, I'm essentially saying all fiat currencies, including the US dollar, are going to collapse sometime between 2015 and 2020. And then right after I started in 2010 and 2011, I heard about Bitcoin. Bitcoin started in 2009, but I never heard about it until 2011 when it was around $3. And as soon as I heard about it, I got incredibly excited because a lot of people used to ask me, they said, what's going to replace the dollar and all these fiat currencies once they collapse? And I said, I don't know, but I'm sure the market will come up with solutions. And so when I heard about Bitcoin, I was just so happy because the market had already come up with a solution. It was actually launched in 2009, just almost at the very bottom of the financial crisis in 2008 and just the beginning of 2009. So it's perfect timing to bring out a free market currency. And so I've been a big proponent of it ever since, and I've looked into it ever since, and we've been talking about it now for years at the Dollar Vigilante. And I really think it is one of the ways that we can avoid this complete and total collapse.
You're one of the, and I need to recognize that, Jeff, one of the very first to really get on the whole blockchain technology, Bitcoin specifically as an application on that, and have stayed hard to the course. And now, you know, the Financial Repression Authority, we believe a significant part of your asset allocation needs to be outside the banking system. And we can get into a discussion about what we mean by outside the banking system, but nothing is better than these kinds of applications. But to the reason I wanted to talk to you today, that article by Ambrose Evans Pritchard. Could you tell us what upset you about the his arguments, what was wrong with his arguments, and be polite.
Yeah, I'll try to be as polite as possible. Essentially, it looked like a propaganda piece. It looked like it was written by the Bank of England as a press release, and he put it out. And I know that you somewhat respect some of his journalistic writings. And I've seen him from time to time. I've never fully followed him, but I have noticed in the past, I've seen a few articles by him, and I was like, hey, this has actually got some truth in it, which you never see in the mainstream media ever. And so...
But I think he started to drink the Kool-Aid. But anyway...
Yeah, they might have got to him or something, or who knows. Like, essentially what the article he wrote, and the article was called Central Bank Beats Bitcoin at Own Game with Rival Supercurrency. And essentially what I said about this article is he's either incredibly stupid and he actually thinks they have, or he's actually just putting out propaganda for the world controllers, the central bankers. That's the only two options with what he wrote, because it's in no way whatsoever does this new central bank cryptocurrency, which isn't barely even a cryptocurrency, does it compete or defeat Bitcoin in any way?
It isn't even out, is it? It's not even there's RS coin you're referring to, and it's not even on the market.
I don't believe so. That was the first I heard of it, and that was March 16th that I wrote about it. So about 3 weeks ago. I haven't heard anything about it since. So essentially, they had come up with this plan. This is essentially. I'll give you the background here. The central banks are incredibly worried about Bitcoin. Essentially, what they're trying to do right now is to try to get everyone into the banking system and then try to bring in a worldwide taxation system and essentially a one world government and a one world central bank, and then bring out a one world currency. That is the plan. It's been actually a plan for decades, if not centuries, if not millennia in general. That has generally been the plan of these sort of people, central bankers and the people who control the central banks, which control almost every government on earth except for a few. There was only really a few governments who didn't have central banks that were controlled by these same people. Many of them have now been attacked and occupied and destroyed. One of them was Libya. Another one is Syria. That's why they're going after it so hard right now. And another one is Iran. And so that's why Iran is always demonized. But essentially what they're trying to do is, and you're seeing this now with the war on cash, they're trying to get cash out of the system. And because the system is so indebted now, and this was actually planned, they planned to create this system which impoverishes people so much and gets so much of the wealth into they say the 1%, people think it's the 1%, it's the 0.0001%. It's a very top financial elite that has all the money, literally trillions of dollars, the Rothschilds and people like them. And they're trying to get, they actually have this plan to essentially collapse the entire system so they can bring in a new system. This has been a long-term plan. It's been for decades and decades. And so now we're reaching near the end of that plan, and they've indebted the entire world so much, including every government. Every government is insolvent with debt if interest rates were to rise at all, because that's why they're trying to keep interest rates. And the Federal Reserve has kept interest rates essentially at 0% for 8 years now. That is absolutely astonishing, but not surprising, because if they allow interest rates to rise, the U.S. government would very quickly be insolvent. With $19 trillion worth of debt, if they allowed the interest rate to rise to 10%, which would be a very low level if they let it go to its natural level, that'd be almost $2 trillion per year in interest payments alone. Very quickly, the whole game would collapse, and they are trying to put that off a little bit longer. And what they're trying to do is get everyone into the banking system now. So that's why they're putting in things like FATCA, the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act. That's why every time you go to a bank anywhere in the world, you try to open an account, it's very difficult to do. And if you can, they're going to want to know every detail of your life. It's because it's all going into one central database now, and they want to essentially make it so no one can evade taxes. And in fact, that's what the whole Panama Papers leak was all about, was to try to make it look like all these people are evading taxes, therefore we need more controls, and essentially get everyone into a system where there is no privacy, no one can hide anything. The governments of the world know exactly where every penny you have is, and they control it because it's in the banking system. So that's essentially what the plan is, and they're doing it very quickly now. Now they're trying to do a war on cash. Even Chase just put limits on ATM withdrawals the other day. You're seeing in Europe a lot of places just trying to get rid of cash completely, including Denmark and Sweden. They're almost cash free already, getting everyone into the banking system. And then they're going to go even further in negative interest rates and really impoverish and really destroy everything. So that's why they're scared to death of Bitcoin, because if people know about Bitcoin and they start getting into Bitcoin, they cannot control it. The only only way that they could control Bitcoin is to turn off the internet or turn off the power. And those are actually options. That's why they keep mentioning the government internet kill switch, because they're considering that an option. If this thing gets too popular and they lose control of the money system, which is what they want, that is number one always to them, is that's how they control the governments and the world essentially, is by controlling the monetary system. They might even turn off the internet. So it's a very highly dangerous game they're playing, and most people don't even realize it. And so they're incredibly concerned about Bitcoin. So they're always trying to attack Bitcoin.
Jeff, if I could interrupt there just briefly.
Sure.
Could you just explain what it is that makes Bitcoin, which sits on a platform called blockchain technology, what makes it so incredibly not only powerful but almost impossible to police within a fixed regime, and therefore being peer-to-peer and global, and the only way they can stop it, because my opinion is it could will revolutionize banking and transactions. But could you help explain that a little?
Yeah, absolutely. For people who don't know what Bitcoin is, you probably already stopped watching because you're probably already so confused. But it's quite simple. It's a new internet-based currency that, to explain it, it's sort of like what Napster was. So 10 years ago or 15 years ago, when people used to share music, there was something called Napster, and the government went after them as well. They don't want anything to be decentralized. They want everything to be in their control. And so essentially with Bitcoin, there is no Bitcoin office. There is no Bitcoin CEO. It is completely decentralized. Bitcoin essentially exists on thousands, if not tens or hundreds of thousands, if not millions of computers around the world. So they'd have to turn off every computer that has any sort of Bitcoin server on it to get rid of Bitcoin, which is almost impossible unless they turn off the internet or turn off the power. And again, that is an option for them.
Two computers operating anywhere in the world that could commute, it would still be alive, right?
Yeah, technically it would. It'd probably be very, very slow, but...
If there was anybody outside the banking system, which would have this system, it would circumvent the banking system. So they got to get it all. They got to get everything in the banking system before they can really implement what they want to implement. And Bitcoin, the technology destroys that possibility. Is that too simplistic?
No, that's essentially what it is. And so they're very highly concerned about it. Bitcoin could destroy the central banks. And the central banks are one of the worst things ever in human history. People don't even realize it's what's impoverished so many people. Every war has been backed by these central banks. They can't have these wars without the money printing of the central banks. I think it was Rothschild who said, "I care not who makes the laws as long as I control the money." Because once you control the money, if there is governments, and this goes to a whole other topic about should we even have governments? Governments, in my opinion, are an unnecessary evil and the worst thing to ever happen to mankind before central banks. But if you're going to have governments, you want to control the money supply. If you want to control the government, that's what they do. So that's what the Federal Reserve and all central banks do. The governments do not control the big decisions. It's the people behind the scenes who control the money who tell the governments what they want done, and that's been going on for decades.
Why should people have confidence in Bitcoin or the technology that it's not fraudulent? Because obviously the central banks and regulators say you're exposed. You're going to find yourself ripped off, if I can use an expression like that. Why is that actually impossible to happen?
Well, the main reason is because Bitcoin is open source software. So there is no one place, there is no secret code on it. Anyone who wants to can look at the Bitcoin code. And of course, thousands of people have. I'm not a coder myself, but I know many people who I trust. And I say, is there anything in this system that is nefarious or something that can be controlled or anything like that? And they all say no. So I trust them on that. If I really wanted to look into it, I'd become a coder and look into it. But you have a certain level of trust with certain people. But it is open source software. So essentially, there's nothing hidden in it. And it is all over the world. It's on so many computers that you can't stop it. So that's the real issue they're having, is how to control it. There is, like I said, there is no Bitcoin CEO. That's how they would normally control things. If there was a person who ran Bitcoin, they would immediately go and arrest that person. You even saw that in Australia. A guy came out a few months ago, and one of many, who said he's Satoshi Nakamoto, which is the we believe, pseudonym for whoever first created it. And immediately the Australian police went to his house, raided it, and kidnapped him because they still, these people aren't incredibly smart, actually. It's kind of funny. They're not technologically super geniuses, the central bankers and all these people. And so they think, okay, oh, that's the guy. We'll go get him. We'll put him in jail, and then it's dead. They don't understand completely. But that's really what they would normally do. If someone was trying to compete with them, they would try to destroy them or arrest the CEO and put them in jail for life. But they can't do that with Bitcoin. There's no office to go to. That's another thing they would do, is go in with SWAT teams and knock down the door and steal all the computers. They can't do that. You can't take a gun and destroy the computers and Bitcoin goes away. So that's why it scares them.
They can't really stop it because it's peer-to-peer globally. Maybe as badly and more frightening to them is they can't tax it. So suddenly all these transactions, there's no way they can regulate, control, or tax it, which is the central premise of what the banks really are about, right? Well, they're not tax, but charging, to charge for it. And I think that's one of the points that Ambrose Evans was making. It will be a service from the bank. So in actual fact, they'll be able to charge for this instead of it being free, and the governments will be able to tax it. That's what they're scared of. Is that too simplistic?
No, again, that's exactly what they're scared of. They want to control it, first of all, to control governments, and they want to be able to tax it, of course, which mostly goes into all their pockets again. And they also want to essentially be able to control it so they can decide. For example, the central banks, a lot of what they do is they control the economy because the economy is based on money. Every transaction is based on money. So when they affect the price of money, which is the interest rate, they can sway things in directions they want it to go. If they want a big stock market bubble, they can create one, which is, of course, if you have that power, you can make trillions and trillions of dollars. But it's actually not so much about the money with these people, it's about the power. They already have trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, so it's clearly not just about the money, it's about the power. They want to control and enslave all of humanity, and that's why everyone out there should have End the Fed bumper stickers. They should, if you believe in government and care about government, you should call your Congress people and tell them to audit the Fed, end the Fed. You should go to protests, you should write online, you should look into it. Central banking is a heinous evil in the world, and it needs to be stopped. But if we can't stop it, what we can do is create something new, and just that's what they say about, I don't call things like Bitcoin a revolution so much as an evolution. It's creating something that just circumvents the entire system completely, which is quite beautiful, actually, because you can have a revolution, which is usually quite bloody, and it's usually a lot of fighting, or you can have an evolution where you just go around and create something better and start using that. And that's really what Bitcoin is. It's an actual evolution in money. And you brought up earlier that a lot of people think it's risky or it could be fraudulent. I think the thing about fraudulent, I don't think that's justified at all. I can't find any way that would be possible. It is risky, though. It is only 7 or 8 years old now. It is a new technology. There is anything could happen. We've seen Bitcoin have problems. Almost every year it has a problem. Almost every time it gets worked out, though, amongst the entire global community, which is beautiful. That's actual real democracy in action. That's actual human action fixing things, as opposed to waiting for a real secretive central banker in a boardroom behind closed doors making decisions about what happens. The people actually get to decide what happens and what they want to use. So it's very interesting times.
And you make a really good point in terms of government centralizing everything. Here we are living in a world where everything's decentralized. Get the decision making to the lowest, get it involved. We have the technology with the internet. I mean, business has been doing that for 25 years, etc. Then we got the government trying to centralize it. Well, technology is changing that, and we've seen it in all sorts. Cab drivers booking hotel rooms, and now the technology is even going to change the way we do central banking, the way we do transactions, and possibly the way we even govern ourselves. Instead of it being a pyramid with command and control, it can actually be the other way around, where it comes from the source. So this, and I'm not trying to get too academic here, this is profound. It's more than banking. There's more than just transactions. There's the whole basis of which you could even be governed if you can start to get everybody involved through, I'll maybe use the word internet. Is that a possibility? Is that the kind of thing that's frightening them right now?
I don't think they've fully realized that's a risk yet. That they're always behind the curve on these things. But once they realize that, they're really going to get scared. This technology, this blockchain type technology, could change everything. And you pointed out everything is changing so fast. If you really think about it, 15 years ago there was no Google, there was no YouTube, there was no Facebook, there was no smartphones, and all within the last 10 or 15 years, the biggest hotel company in the world owns no hotels, Airbnb. The biggest taxi company in the world has no taxis, Uber. You just look at almost anything like that. This is changing rapidly, and this has now come to money. And money, of course, is so important. And if for anyone out there, if you haven't used Bitcoin, just start using Bitcoin. There's not one person I know who hasn't used Bitcoin, and as soon as they use it, they go, wow. This changes everything. As soon as you realize you can, for example, if you were sitting here right with me right now and you hadn't used Bitcoin right now, I'd say go to this website. I'd say click a button. Okay, now you have a Bitcoin account. What's your number? And you'd send it to me. And I go, okay, I just sent you Bitcoin. You'd have like some Bitcoin in your account. It'd be 1 second. It could be a little longer, but it'd be very quick. And the person would be like, wow. And I'd say go buy something. And they'd say where? And I'd say almost anywhere now. And there's many different ways to buy almost anything with Bitcoin now. So you literally could, and this person could be in China. So the person could be in China right now, and within a few seconds, I could send them money, and they could already be buying stuff, and no one would be able to stop that transaction. We could be doing $1 million or $1 billion as well. So this is a very changing technology, and as you pointed out, Gordon, it goes way beyond just money. Money is important enough. This could be where everything is based, and there's so much innovation going on right now. There's a company called BitNation, for example, and they're trying to essentially put governance on the blockchain. So all contracts, all property deeds, everything would be on the blockchain. They're actually starting in Africa because many of these countries never had a sort of a system of private property and a way to have a good system to tell who owns what, and that's why they've had problems for so many years or even centuries. But they're trying to put that into place, and if people start using these sort of systems very quickly, there becomes really no need for government whatsoever. I think there's no need for it now, but for people who think there is some need for it still, contracts and adjudication and things like that, that can all be taken out by these blockchain technologies. So that's why you're seeing billions of dollars actually going into this right now. Many people don't realize it. This is sort of where the internet was in 1994, is where Bitcoin is in 2015, 2016. And I was there for the start of the internet, so I remember it's very similar. Your average person still doesn't know what a big deal is going on behind the scenes, but this is going to revolutionize the world. It's not just going to be Bitcoin. In fact, who knows about Bitcoin? It could be gone in a couple of years because the innovation is happening so fast. And there's going to be so many things built on top of this technology that it's going to change the world.
And Jeff, I come from a technology background, and there's been probably 4 or 5 times in my career where I've seen something and it's just, my jaw dropped and I said, this is significant. I saw it when I saw a relational database. Before there was such a thing as database. I saw it when I discovered the algorithms that subsequently became Google. That type of approach to being able to do search, which I found absolutely stunning. I found it when I was living in Europe at CERN, when I subsequently became the internet. And the last time the last time I saw is when I discovered blockchain technology. And of the 4, this is the biggest. This is the one that has the most profound. The others were technology. This one, it transcends so many different areas. I had Reggie Middleton on, who basically gave up being in the financial business to go out and start a company called Verisasium based on the blockchain technology, because he thinks it'll revolutionize transactions, contracts, and we're not even talking about the banking system here. So, and as you said, and I'm tripping over billions of dollars that is flowing now into investments, but it's getting hardly any press in terms of the amount of investment. But back to the article, if I could, just to finish up there. What was it that Ambrose Evans Pritchard got wrong? What did he miss blatantly, or what was the propaganda that he was handed? What did it miss?
Well, essentially, the article is saying that this new coin, RS coin, very creatively named, these people who run the central banks and control the central banks are not very creative. Essentially, they're always just trying to copy what creative people have done. What he's saying is that this is going to, Bitcoin has failed and this is going to take over. And that is absolutely not true. Having been in Bitcoin since 2011, I've heard almost every 3 months that Bitcoin is dead. And every time I buy more, and that's been doing quite well, from $3 up to about $420 today. And he's saying this is going to be so much better. I actually think RS Coin will actually do well. I think it will go out and a lot of people will start using it. I think, and when I say well, I mean it'll be used, and actually it'll be sort of the basis. They're going to get rid of fiat cash and they're going to make this essentially the new fiat currency, but it's all going to be crypto, so they can even track it even more. That's what they want. And so they're going to put this in, and this will probably be the new currency essentially. So it will do well in that respect. It will be used probably by millions, if not billions of people, unfortunately, until they realize what a scam it is. But essentially, it will probably do well. But to say that it beats Bitcoin at its own game is a joke, because it has nothing. It beats Bitcoin in no way at all. And one of the things that I really laughed at was that he said that about Bitcoin. He said such a currency transfer. Or sorry. Let me read this. Such a currency transfers control of money creation from private banks to the state. Arguably, this would make the financial system safer and less prone to boom-bust cycles. So what he's saying here is that this new RS coin is really good because it's going to give the government or the central bank more control of the money system, which will make the system safer and less prone to boom-bust cycles, which of course we know that's the whole reason we have boom-bust cycles, and that's the whole reason it's not safe, is because the government and the central banks have control of the money and control of the interest rates, and they continually create these booms and busts, and that's what makes Bitcoin so great. So either Ambrose, or whatever he calls himself, Ambrose, Evans, Pritchard, is just not very smart about these things, or he's just helping them, or he's sold out to them. It's one or the other. And Ambrose, if you're watching this, why don't you tell us, do you not know what you're talking about, or did you sell out?
Let's hope he's watching, because I'd love to hear the response there.
I don't think you're going to hear a response. I didn't give him a good answer that he can come back with.
Jeff, investments, and I know you don't make investment advice, but I do know you write about lots of opportunities. Where should investors be looking at? Where kinds of areas are you looking at and exploring right now to capitalize on this?
Well, we write the Dollar Vigilante. We have a paid subscription newsletter for it. It's doing very well at dollarvigilante.com. And we've been covering since 2010 just ways to survive and prosper during this coming collapse, which we're going through right now. And a lot of those ways have been very hard money related, or hard asset related. Essentially what you say, Gordon, get your assets outside of the financial and banking system, because these things are going to be locked down more and more. The capital controls, the bank bail-ins that we saw in Cyprus, the closures of banks that we saw in Greece, these are going to happen all throughout Europe. It's going to happen all throughout Europe. It's all going to happen all throughout the West in different ways. They're going to roll them out in different ways, but these are all going to happen. So get your assets mostly outside of that system. So we've been, since 2010, into things like precious metals. We have some of our recommendations in things like precious metal stocks, which our senior analyst Ed Bugos thinks is probably one of the best times in history to be buying these stocks. And then things like cryptocurrencies as well. We've been in Bitcoin since $3. We just covered another new cryptocurrency. The whole cryptocurrency world is a whole other world. There's one called Ethereum that we covered that went up about 400% within 2 months, I think, since the start of this year. So, we're one of the only newsletters out there covering this kind of stuff. We're way ahead of the pack. No one else is even close in terms of a similar newsletter that's covering these sort of things. Everyone else is either living in the past or they've already died, because a lot of them were just covering gold stocks for the last 5 years, which we were doing terribly. So we were very soft on them since 2011, and now we're getting back into them very heavily. But those sort of things. We're also shorting the system, shorting the stock markets. We've been doing very well on that. I think in the next few months, so it's going to do very well as well. So those sort of things, but very sort of anti-system sort of investments and trades and speculations, and also getting your assets outside of your own country, internationalizing your assets, buying foreign real estate. That's a really good idea, in my opinion, if you've got a fair amount of assets, because as this gets worse and worse, if you're in a place like the U.S. or God forbid, anywhere in Europe almost, they're going to start to collapse. And as they collapse, they start to take away everything from the citizens who have any anything left. And we saw that in the U.S. in 1933 when they confiscated gold. So you want to get assets internationalized. That's the new diversification, in my opinion, is not stocks, bonds, or cash. It's where is your assets and in what countries are they and under what structures are they? Because there's going to be a lot of confiscation, a lot of capital controls and bail-ins. This is a very dangerous time, and most people have no idea what's going on, and most people are going to get really hurt because they haven't woken up. And hopefully many of your viewers who have paid attention to what you're saying, I'm sure they're much more aware than the average public, but your average person is just going to get destroyed in this coming collapse.
I talked to James Rickards here last week out with his new book, The New Case for Gold, and I mentioned in the discussion our view that you need to be outside the banking system. I'm not dumping on the banking system. I'm just talking about risk mitigation and the amount of risk associated with issues within the banking system, the financial system, and how to protect yourself. So trying to be conservative. And he immediately came back and said, you're absolutely right. And why I'm bringing it up is he said, Gord, what people don't understand is most of your wealth today is in nothing more than a digital electronic symbol. You just that which gives you a claim to something. He says there's 1,600, and remember he consults to the CIA and has for years, and book Currency War lays that all out. But he says there's 1,600 people over in Russia that are dedicated to trying to figure out ways to disrupt the U.S. financial system, and whether they're rolling blackouts, whatever they're going to be. That kind of thing is there. That's the new type of warfare. Not suggesting there's a war, but that's the new world. So let's just say there's a possibility. Don't you think you should have some hedge against it? Things like Bitcoin allow you to be completely independent of that, as long as there's some servers working somewhere, right? On that, Jeff. But he was quite emphatic that wasn't some pie in the sky and ridiculous statement that I was making. That in fact that is the new reality in his mind, and I think we've had that support. Comments on that?
Yeah, well, I totally agree with you, obviously, and absolutely. That's what I've been saying for a number of years. Even if Russia isn't going to take out the U.S. financial system, which actually I'm not too sure on that. I see all of this is being controlled by the central bankers at a level even above the nation states. But if you just look at the total debt and what's going on, if you just pay attention to the news and what they're doing every day and locking things down, you can see where this is all going. This is headed towards a collapse. How it plays out is anyone's guess, but you don't want to have all your eggs in one basket. Just keeping all of your assets in a bank account in the U.S. or in Canada and Europe or anywhere almost really, with these highly leveraged banks that could collapse at any time unless they bail them in again, which is possible, which will start to go towards hyperinflation. So at that point, the money that you do have in the bank won't be worth very much anymore, and then they will put in more capital control. It's just going to be crazy. This is actually going to be a time talked about in history, I think, for centuries. Once this collapse happens, we've got a total global fiat currency system, as you pointed out, that is basically essentially just computer bits on a bank on a computer controlled by central banksters. That is worth nothing. The intrinsic value is zero. It's not backed by anything, and that's what they always try to bring up about Bitcoin. It's not backed by anything. Well, what's backing the U.S. dollar? It's a bit in a computer at the Federal Reserve that they can just do whatever they want with at any time. And if you talk about the physical paper cash, that's a piece of paper with a dead criminal printed on it, and on the other side is an Illuminati all-seeing eye pyramid. I don't know if anyone ever noticed that. There's no intrinsic value of that either, and all these things are going to return to their intrinsic value in the next few years, in my opinion.
Well, we have to remember a dollar bill is nothing more than an unsecured credit note, and that's all it is. Whereas gold is actually, as terms of hard assets, are real, tangible wealth, and people need to pay attention to it. Of what can happen that wasn't a reality a few years ago. But when you see bank bail-ins, why do we need that? When you see negative interest rates, it's $8 to $9 trillion around the world. We see arguments about going to a cashless society, and you're getting 1% in the banks or that. Why would you even think of taking that kind of risk other than cover daily transactions? So I'm not trying to dump on the banks here, but it echoes with why that propaganda would come out of the Telegraph so hard. And I suspect we're going to see more and more of it. And I really caution our listeners to read things with a careful eye. Watch, pay a lot of attention. Jeff does. Jeff writes about them all the time, spells it out, gives us investment advice and what kinds of things to look at. And you've made a lot of good calls. I think your Shimada is a great call, Jeff. And I see it as markets peaked around the world last June. We got a big crisis, as you called, in August, September. The January was another reinforcement of it. Nothing ever just happens immediately. It's a massive kind of process, and clearly we're seeing evidence of it. Jeff, we have to wrap right now. Any messages you'd like to leave with our listeners that we haven't touched on, and how could they learn more about your work and your writings?
Oh, we covered so much. I don't know if there's anything else. Pay attention. Turn off your TV. Television is called programming for a reason. Get outside of listening to those guys, CNBC and all that. Their plan is to keep you in the markets until everyone loses everything. Just do your own education. That's listening to people like Gordon's show and paying attention to what we're doing. And of course, make your own decisions. If you think I'm wrong, then don't listen to me. That's fine. But do your own research. Look into things. There's a lot more going on out there than most people know. So I think this year is going to be a crazy year. I've been on record saying that. I said 2016 is going to be a bloodbath. It started in January. It looked like it already was. We've had a rebound now, but I think that actually just ended. So for people out there, just check out my new video. It kind of says what I think is going to happen throughout the rest of this year. It's called Super Shemitah, Elite's Jubilee Year Plan to Crash World Economy by October 2016. You can find it on YouTube or just go to surviveshemitah.com.
Jeff, it's always a pleasure talking to you. I always appreciate your valuable insights, and you do great work, and our listeners should check out your site. Talk to you again.
Thank you, Gordon.